our council meeting for an extraordinary meeting in extraordinary times. Thank you all very much for coming on with the Zoom application, and we'll just explain one or two things about that before we go into the agenda proper. I think we've got everybody up that we're expecting, bar one member who's stuck in traffic. But one of the things, we are going out live on YouTube, as you all know, courtesy of Jim, who is on the screen, on one of your screens anyway, is the Derbyshire Dales District Council logo. And we just need to check that everybody can hear me and Saundra, as I'll chair the meeting, and Saundra will control the meeting, as it were, from her laptop. And I'd like you all just to put your thumbs up to say you can all hear me okay.
Councillor Purdy is absent at the moment.
Right, he's left the room. Councillor Martin Burfoot, can you hear us? Just put your thumbs up. Just your physical thumb. Lovely. Yeah. Okay, does that look like everyone, Saundra?
Yeah. Councillor Purdy, can you just confirm that you can hear everything? With a thumb, sorry, not a pen. Yeah. Right,
okay. Lovely. Okay, so thank you, Councillor Wayne, that's lovely. That's lovely. Okay, so if you cannot at any time hear the conversation and the debate going on, please contact us either by waving or raising the little blue hand you've got on your iPads, or coming to Saundra or right through the chat, which is at the bottom of the screen. I'm looking at two screens, so hopefully I can see not all of you at once, but I might be looking in two different directions depending on where I'm looking with the papers as well. Okay, so those are the procedure rules, and fingers crossed we can get this working okay and satisfactorily for everybody's concerns. Jackie will be busy taking the voting, but we'll come to that later on. But she's also going to give any apologies now. Jackie.
Yes, Chair, the only apologies we've received are from Councillor Hill.
Thank you very much. Okay. And if, as Saundra said just prior to the meeting, if we could all be on mute until asked to speak, and either I or Saundra will unmute you at that particular time. Okay, moving on to item 2, public participation. I gather one question has been received, and I'm going to ask Councillor Purdy, who we've just lost. There he is, to take that one, and we'll unmute Councillor Purdy. Oh, whoops, did it send?
Thank you, Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yep, please.
Thank you.
Councillor Purdy.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to those of you looking in and on this meeting on YouTube. We've received a question from Councillor from Clifton Parish Councillor Paul Siddle. So I'll read the question out first and then give our response so that you understand the question. So Clifton Parish Council is still dealing with queries from concerned parishioners regarding potential change of use of the coal yard on Water Lane, Clifton, to a gypsy oblique traveller site. Can the council confirm that the council or agents acting on behalf of the council are not contacting and have not contacted the owner of the coal yard regarding such a change of use, so that we can reassure the tax-paying parishioners of Clifton, please? So this response is prepared, and I thank Tim Braun for that response. The council has carefully considered its position in relation to the ongoing need to deliver a permanent traveller site in line with the local plan. In response to a number of freedom of information requests, the council has declined to provide information on specific sites on the grounds that to do so would be likely to prejudice the effective conduct of public affairs. The same reasoning applies to this question, and therefore the council can neither confirm nor deny whether it is in discussions regarding any specific site. When any solid proposals are available, these will be brought before committee, and the development of any site will be subject to planning permission with the opportunity for full public engagement at that time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Purdy. Now, item 3 is interests. No interests have been forwarded to either the Secretariat or I prior to the meeting. I take it there are no interests. Jolly good. Item 4, leaders' announcements. Councillor Purdy.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. Well, COVID-19 has brought many changes to all of our lives and throughout the world, together with a tragic loss of life, and which also threatens the very heart of our economy. These are unprecedented times, and it is absolutely vital that we continue to take great care to protect ourselves and to especially protect those on the front line. We owe an immense debt of gratitude to all of the people on the front line, but especially the staff in the NHS. The concern of this authority is for the safety of the residents, visitors and businesses in Derbyshire Dales, and therefore the authority, as part of the Local Resilience Forum, are looking closely at a measured response to the latest advice from government as to how we can start to deliver an economic recovery plan, but at the same time keeping everyone safe. As a council, I believe that we have adapted extremely well to the emergency situation, such as working from home and with new technology. All staff in the authority need to be congratulated and thanked for their hard work and dedication in very difficult circumstances. This council meeting, therefore, is unique in the council's history, with each one of us participating at our home via the Zoom platform. Our business team, led by Karen and in conjunction with Avato, were listed just 3 weeks ago as the #1 local authority in the UK for getting the most monies out to the most accounts to help Derbyshire Dales businesses with the government business relief scheme. A brilliant effort, and I'm sure you'll all agree. Praise has rightly been given to Paul, Saundra and to Jim Fern for keeping us all up to date with the daily workings of each department. And Saundra in particular has been working extremely hard in getting us all up to speed with virtual meetings in order that we can continue to operate as an efficient authority. It is important, therefore, in my view, to pass the recommendations before you tonight. The staff survey has proved a valuable tool in establishing thoughts and suggestions on the current situation and how it affects the staff. Members have stepped up to the plate in different ways to help their own communities, ranging from looking out for the elderly, the shielded and vulnerable, assisting with shopping or the delivery of food and prescription medicines. Those of our members who are having to self-isolate have also been busy helping their own community in different ways, but with equal effect. Councillor Sue Hobson and I liaise every week with Paul, and at other times as necessary, by way of helping to steer the ship from our remote locations. I have done my best also to keep you all updated with the work of my leadership during this emergency through the various video and teleconference each week, when we press various ministers or senior officers of government on the immense pressure to local authorities caused by COVID-19. There are usually up to and sometimes around 300 leaders and chief execs in these meetings, especially at the District Council Network Conference, for example. A real concern we're pressing government on at the present is the rising cost to all local authorities in dealing with the emergency situation coupled with the loss of income. Karen responds on a regular basis to government by the completion of a prerequisite pro forma, which asks us to set out our financial situation. The British are resilient people, and this pandemic has at least had a positive effect in bringing out the greater good in people wishing to help others. And we have witnessed that effect with the setting up of many voluntary groups throughout the whole of Derbyshire Dales, and we pay tribute to their efforts in this regard. Well done to all, and thank you. I'm sure that it goes without saying that we all look forward to return to normal life, but more especially to be able to see and hug our family and loved ones again. Members, I would like you to join me now, please, in a moment of silence and reflection, prayer if you wish, in order for this authority to mark its respect for all those people that have lost their life, have been affected as a result of COVID-19. So we pause for a moment, please. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So until we actually meet again, please stay safe and keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item 5 is questions. None have been received, so no questions this time. Item 6, remote meetings protocol and procedure rules. Saundra, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So we now have the regulations in place to enable us to meet virtually, which is very much welcomed. So what you have before you is a set of procedural rules, which I'd ask you all to adopt as a means of regulating the business as we meet virtually. The bulk of this has been taken from best practice developed by local government lawyers and democratic services officers in reflecting the regulations. And some of the principles Councillor Fitzherbert referred to in opening the meeting. There is a new definition of what is meant by being present at a meeting. Whilst we would see who was physically present in a council chamber, we now have to be able to, for you to confirm that you can hear and preferably see the proceedings. So at any time that audio drops out, please try and alert us one way or another, because we would like to pause to get you back up to speed rather than exclude you from any decision making. So hopefully these are self-explanatory. There is one deviation from the current rules of procedure, which I just want to highlight, and that's in relation to public participation. The regulations don't say that we need to have public participation, but there is an expectation because it's covered in our current constitution. However, what I'm suggesting at this moment in time, to give us time to properly prepare, is to suspend public participation in its current format, in that we don't physically invite people into our virtual meeting room, but that we adapt to it and allow public participation in alternative format. As you'll have seen earlier this evening, someone has adapted to that procedure already and formulated a question for us. That's not to say that we won't reintroduce public participation. I think that's highly desirable. But what I would like to do is work with the technology, see the best practice out there before reintroducing that into our forum. The other element which I've talked about in the report is a slight deviation from our current rules of procedure. We are meeting virtually. In my view, and it's only my view, you may not share this, that this meeting format needs to be slightly more dynamic than it is in the council chamber. And our rules of debate currently allow someone to propose a notice on for the council to debate in a period of 7 minutes. Speakers are then allowed 5 minutes. That's a very, very long time for you to concentrate on a very small device in this virtual environment without having the benefit of non-visual communication that you would have in a council chamber. So we're relying on what can be said and what can be heard. So I'm suggesting that that can be adequately undertaken with a reduced time frame. Thank you to those that have raised questions today, because I think there might have been some confusion. The time limit doesn't affect the number of questions you can ask or the time it takes for you to ask them. Questions are unlimited. The rules of debate only apply when you are moving a proposition or when you want to speak for or against. So the reduction in the time limit might encourage you perhaps to be slightly more focused, more to the point, so that we can keep these meetings as dynamic as possible and minimise that spare time that we might have experienced in the real council chamber. So the recommendation is for you to adopt these procedures as set out. Now, recommendation 2, I'm also asking for some delegated authority, because this might not be the perfect solution for us. So I'm asking for delegated authority to perhaps make minor modifications to these rules of procedure as we go along. And one of my early commitments is to look at how we will run a planning committee. And these rules of procedure might need to be modified in order for us to do that. If you think about how dynamic a planning committee is, we show visuals, we have to replicate matters as they go out on site visit. And I think we need to go through that, talk to other authorities of their experiences of how to do this. So if we can achieve a planning committee and we need to make minor variations to this process, I hope that you'll allow me to do that. I suspect if we're going to introduce planning committees and do this properly, you'll want me to bring back any significant amendments to the council so that you can see it, because it is a very, very different type of meeting where you'll want to engage with the public. We will be reliant on visuals that you're used to. site plans, visuals of the sites. We'll need to incorporate that, and this whole issue of screen sharing brings a new dynamic into virtual meetings. Yet, to be fair, we haven't yet thought through. So that would just be give you some idea of what the delegation is for. It's to move this agenda on and to refine our virtual meeting practice to introduce planning committees, which we've not yet committed to. And happy to answer any questions. And you have 3 hands up, Chair.
That's right. Well, of course, several, yes. Councillor Hobson, please.
Chair, I'm happy to move this report recommendations. The remote meeting protocols and procedure rules have been prepared to allow this council to continue to work remotely in these challenging times. I'm pleased that although public participation is temporarily suspended, it is replaced with an alternative mechanism for the public to bring matters to the council's attention. I'd like to thank all those involved at Derbyshire Dales District Council for setting up these new procedures, especially Saundra and Jim, and our members and officers alike for their patience, especially in these early days. I'm pleased that we will be looking at these delegated powers, because I do accept that the planning committee does have its own challenges. I'm happy to support both recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Finesse.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Good. Okay. I'd like to second the recommendations and certainly echo Councillor Hobson's views there, which I wholly endorse. I think we've had quite a few, the training and trials that we've had for this system seem to have gone well, you know, and everybody's turned up tonight. So I can't see any reason why we should have any problems with it. And that's why I'm certainly happy to recommend.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Flitter.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
I can, thank you.
I found it. Yeah, it's difficult to keep this in context. I'm looking at the remote meetings and the protocol used. I know that some changes in procedure are mandatory. We don't have a choice on that, but I do have some initial concerns. And one is who decides and what constitutes a minor refinement and what from that of a major refinement. Also noting the options on the public participation, I think it's good that we can still hear the views from the public, but will these comments from the public be read out in full? Because any attempt to summarise letters, I believe, will deny members of the full context of concerns. And finally, I'd just like to add that by councillors having to submit questions on the agenda before the meeting, I can see a diminished level of debate. We have the right to challenge officers leading up to a full debate with further questions to follow, but with a limitation of time. And I am concerned that we get that right. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Flitter. Sandra, did you want to answer that?
Yeah, I'll try and answer those. First of all, in terms of what is a minor and a major amendment, I think you're putting your trust in me to understand the difference. And my difference would be the things that are missing at the moment. That's public participation and adaptation of these rules for any specific meetings. Minor amendments might just be rewording for clarity, but anything that introduces or removes anything from this process, I would automatically seek to bring back to council for approval. In terms of questions, I think that was posed to give you an opportunity to have some of the minor issues answered before we arrived into a virtual meeting. It's not intended to stifle any form of debate or challenge. And even those questions that have already been answered, you have the right to ask them again. It's a facility to help you clarify matters before the meeting begins. That's all. And in terms of questions or issues raised by members of the public, as you've seen earlier, we have been reproducing them in full and will continue to do so until we're in a position to enable the public to make those representations in person.
Okay, thank you very much. I've got Councillor Ratcliffe now, and I'm going to lower your hand and unmute you. I hope. 1 second. Great. Councillor Ratcliffe.
Are you calling me in, Chair?
Yes, please.
Yes,
Yes, please.
thank you.
Yeah.
Can I say that Councillor Flitter has covered my questions and raised the same anxieties that I have about this format. This is not a format for what I would call normal debate. Indeed, I think as time progresses and we use this, despite the fact that we might become practiced in it, I think we will understand and realise its constraints even further. I have to say that I do hope that, in fact, our intention and attentions are drawn to about restoring us back to a normal format as soon as possible, even if that entails physical distancing for committees. Certainly, I know there will be initial difficulties about coming back to a full council meeting, but it seems to me that what we're in is a format that is actually going to restrain us, as it were, from what I would call a genuine interrogation of a council business.
Okay, thank you very much. You're going to, right, so I've now got Councillor Sue Burford. Please, there you are.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right, thank you, Chair. I can absolutely fully understand why we'd want to limit participation and debate from councillors to be limited to 2 minutes. I fully understand that, and I would hope that most councillors would not want to spend more time than that in debate. But am I right in thinking that that would last until May 2021, which seems an awful long time? And I would just wonder whether, you know, we could bring that date forward and review it.
Okay, thank you very much. Saundra?
Yeah, if I can answer that. The regulations that enable us to meet virtually take us to the 7th of May 2021. But I share Councillor Ratcliffe's aspiration that over time we will move from virtual to hybrid to full participation. But the regulations are there to facilitate this because we don't quite know what's going to happen next. Jim and I are already talking about how to stream these meetings live in the council chamber. For those of you that might want to come in and have a sense that you are business as normal, but there are also practicalities. We can't social distance in the council chamber with a full house. It's impossible to enable 2 metre distance. So we need to work with the regulations. We also need to work with the government guidance so that we can progress. And I think these procedure rules, although fit for today, will quickly need to evolve. And some of those might be little minor tweaks, which I'm happy to consult you on before we make them. But the rest, as I outlined about public participation and the dynamics of a planning committee, might need a more thorough change, which will come back to council.
Thank you very much. I think I had Councillor Purdy. I'm just going to unmute you, I hope. Let me try again. Do you want to unmute yourself, please, Councillor Purdy? Lovely. Did you have a point? Hold on, you're not. Sorry, I've lost, there you are, Dan. Let me try and unmute you. Saundra, I can't unmute Joyce.
Oh dear.
Lovely, great. We can hear you. Great.
I think you were unmuting me and I was trying to do it and it was
right. Okay, sorry.
No, I didn't have any questions. I'm sorry after all that.
Okay, thank you.
Put my hand up and then somebody else I'll ask.
Lovely, thank you. Okay, I've got Councillor Tony Morley next. Wait, hold on, Tony. Councillor Tony Morley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was getting slightly ahead of myself there. I didn't realise we were still in questions and I was waiting to join in the debate. I shall join the debate at the appropriate time. Thank you, Chairman.
Right, okay, I'll remember that. And Councillor Raw, please. Yeah.
Yes, I just wanted to express my positive thoughts on virtual meetings. I think we can learn a lot from these meetings and being able to meet online. Professionally, I've been doing a lot of online meetings, and it does reduce all of our carbon footprint this evening, as well as help facilitate councillors that have got childcare responsibilities and other commitments. So I do think there's lots of positives out of trying to develop virtual ways of meetings and looking at it as an alternative, not for all meetings, but some meetings in the future.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Morley, we'll come back to you now. You're next. Tony Morley.
Yeah, yes, thank you. Am I unmuted, Chair?
You are unmuted, yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'm going to support the motion for the reasons that previous councillors have said, simply because it's going to make them more focused, more constructive, and considerably, it's going to make us consider more what we think rather than repeat what other councillors have said. So I think repetition can only be a bad thing in a council meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Well, I've got nobody else on my list to contribute to this particular debate. So it's been moved and seconded. We'll now go to the vote, and I'll try and explain the vote in that we have to do it by roll call. For those of you who might have missed the training, we've all got to actually physically, verbally assent or not to the motion. And so please say clearly when it comes your turn to say for, against, or abstain vocally. And so Jackie's going to call out each member's names. We're going to do it alphabetically as usual. So I'll ask Jackie to take the roll call, and then we'll add up the votes. Jackie.
Okay, Councillor Allinson.
For.
Archer.
For.
Atkin.
For.
Bright.
For.
Buckler.
For.
Bull.
For.
Martin Burfoot. Martin Burfoot.
For.
Sue Burfoot.
For.
Councillor Buttle.
For.
Chapman.
For.
Cruz.
For.
Councillor Donnelly. Councillor Donnelly. Where is he?
Is he muted?
Where is he? Councillor Donnelly. Oh, he's muted. Councillor Donnelly. Can somebody unmute him?
I'm trying to. I think we're both pressing at the same time. Tom, just. It doesn't seem to be working. Should we come back to him? Should we come back to him and do the rest of us?
Okay,
Can we
Elliot.
carry on? We'll come back to Tom.
For.
Fitzherbert.
For.
Flitter.
For.
Froggatt.
For.
Finesse.
For.
Gamble.
For.
Hobson.
For.
Hughes.
For.
Lees.
For.
McDonough.
For.
Tony Morley. He's muted.
For.
Tony. Michelle Morley.
For.
O'Brien.
For.
Hawley.
For.
Purdy.
For.
Ratcliffe.
For.
Raw. Councillor Raw.
For.
Rose. Councillor Rose. For.
Yes, for.
Thank you. Councillor Salt.
4.
Shirley,
For.
Zach,
Councillor Slack,
4.
Statham,
4.
Sutton,
4.
Swindle,
4.
Wayne,
4.
and Wakeman still isn't here, I'm assuming. So it's just Councillor Donnelly, please. Is he there?
where's he gone now? Tom, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you fine, yeah.
All right. What's your vote, please?
Sorry? 4.
What's your 4? Sorry.
Okay, that's unanimous then.
Thank you very much. Okay. We'll get better at this, folks. I'm sure. But that was pretty good. Everyone heard, and everyone. We'll get the muting all sorted out as we go along. Right. Okay. So there's no one in the waiting room, is there, Saundra? I'm just looking. So okay, there's 46 of us. Right. Item 7: the business continuity during peacetime emergency. Saundra, over to you, please.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So it seems a little while, but hasn't a lot happened since we met at our extraordinary meeting of the council, when we decided to delegate decision-making to officers. Reflecting on the dynamic situation that we found ourselves in and the level of decision-making taken by officers, I think it's time to reflect on where we go from here. Hindsight is a wonderful tool, and looking back, had we seen the level of decision-making required during this emergency, I think we may have made a different decision at that time. We made a decision in good faith in delegating decision-making to officers, and the record of decisions that are attached to the agenda shows the complexity of those decisions and how ordinarily those wouldn't belong to an officer to make. Your officers have met in some very extreme circumstances and totally committed to keeping the wheels of this organisation moving. But in all reality, and in terms of good governance, it isn't desirable that officers should make decisions of this complexity, value and status. They belong to the democratic organisation. So in looking forward, and in terms of introducing better governance structure, the recommendation is that we move forward in terms of what will be our recovery plan and the need to make more important and dynamic decisions in relation to COVID-19, to move decision making to an elected body. There is a recommendation on the table that is called an emergency committee. Now, there are authorities across the country who use an emergency committee in terms of their business continuity plans. It's something that is recommended to lie in a dormant state in the Constitution for the majority of the time, but it is a tool at the Chief Executive's disposal to bring into action when there is an emergency situation present. The terms of reference from the emergency committee mirror the type of decisions that your officers have already taken. And I know from some of the questions that you've raised, and thank you for raising those in advance, because it enables me to focus what I'm going to say to try and answer some of your concerns. The very decision making that your officers have taken have been at that very high level. And that's what makes it unsustainable in the future, and how we as officers want this decision making to return to an elected member body. The vehicle for that, the emergency committee, in terms of size, it's recommended to be 8. There is a requirement that it's based on political proportionality. It isn't a magic number, but it is the lowest number that brings into force all political groups and allows representation, and there would be the ability for substitutes. It's intended that this emergency committee is short-lived. We want to get back to decision making by council and the 2 policy committees in due course, but we are at the beginning of a recovery plan. You'll have seen the Prime Minister's announcement on Sunday and the detail that is emerging. I think my colleague Tim made the point that the 50-page document is in fact 60 pages, and that will bring new burdens on the district council to respond in emergency situation. We are not in a state of normality. all of CLT are directing the vast majority of their time and meeting on a daily basis and responding to emergency issues. So a state of normality is not now. So some of the issues that you've raised, I've tried to talk about what is an urgent decision, and I think what Paul will want to reflect on that in a moment. But one of the other issues that you've all raised is about, you know, what is an urgent decision and how long will it last? And I think the one thing that you're looking for is a degree of confidence that this emergency committee will be used as a vehicle only for emergency matters, and that there will be a drive from your officers to bring back a state of normality. So to give you that confidence, and in discussion with the Chief Exec, which we had earlier today, is for me to add recommendation 7 to the officer recommendation to give you that confidence, where we commit to convening a council meeting on the 2nd of July to formally review these proceedings, by which time we feel we have the confidence to introduce a scheduled meeting of council and begin some sense of normality, having had proper time to address what is required. And that's a recovery plan where we know where we're going. We have the ability to address our timeline of decision making, which has been severely disrupted because of this emergency programme. I'll pass over to Paul now, who will want to run through with you the types of decisions that we've had to take in terms of the summary, and then you'll have an opportunity to ask questions. So I'll pass over to Paul. Thank you.
Okay, Paul, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Well, just to emphasise what Saundra's just said there, that it's certainly not business as usual. I think that is pretty self-evident for everybody. But since the council meeting on the 19th of March, the emergency decision-making arrangements that you put in place there, the corporate leadership team have exercised 12 decisions, and those 12 decisions are attached to the agenda papers this evening. They do cover the main areas of service, including regulatory services, community and environmental services, and also resources. Some of those decisions are clearly very significant indeed, and they certainly could not have been anticipated when we made those original provisions on the 19th of March. More particularly, most of them required very prompt responses. Clearly, the most notable of those 12 decisions is the decision related to Freedom Leisure, who are the council's leisure provider. The overriding objective of myself and the rest of the corporate leadership team in considering that particular matter was trying to safeguard the future of our leisure services. We are only 2 years into that contract. We have an excellent service. We have an excellent partner. And because of the circumstances that we faced as a result of COVID-19, there was a very significant risk that unless the council responded promptly to the scenario that Freedom Leisure found themselves in, we could, at the end of this, had a situation whereby we were not in a situation where we could deliver the quality of leisure services that we currently have. So the overriding required a very swift decision. There was a very clear timeline that we was trying to work with on Freedom Leisure because they had immediate financial issues to deal with. The arrangements that were approved on the 19th of March, I didn't feel, and neither did the rest of the corporate leadership team, were adequate to deal with a decision of this magnitude. So this did sit outside the arrangements that Council approved on the 19th of March. There's no doubt about that. But in order to try and get cross-political support for whatever decision we were to take, I engaged not just with the chair of the committee, but also the chairman of Council and all 4 group political leaders in order to establish a cross-party, cross-council view on what was a very significant decision indeed. Everybody was in general agreement with that. There were clearly some reservations, but the principal decision was that we should seek to support Freedom Leisure in maintaining that leisure service. Now, that is not a decision that I would want to take, nor any other of my CLT colleagues would want to take in isolation. And it's decisions of that magnitude, which cannot be anticipated, that we really do need an emergency committee-making forum to decide for us. Moving forward, clearly it's difficult to anticipate what future decisions we will have to make, but I can certainly give you a flavour for some of the ones that are on the horizon already. The most notable one is our considerations regarding the resumption of our garden waste service. That is a service which we've had to suspend because of the COVID-19 self-distancing situation. That is unlikely to change anytime soon, but the corporate leadership team have been working in partnership with Surco to establish what would be required to bring that service back to full normality. The likelihood is that that may well require additional resources. So that is an issue which we are continuing to explore, and at some point in the very near future will require a decision to be taken. That's not a decision which officers can take in isolation. We also have a recovery plan to draft and formulate. Now, that recovery plan will deal with the resumption of normal services to support our communities, but again, there will be some pretty difficult decisions to be taken in terms of what should take a priority and where we should direct our immediate resources. The issue of freedom leisure is going to come back because we've only offered support until the end of June. Clearly, given the Prime Minister's announcement on Sunday, normality is not going to resume before the end of June, and therefore that matter will need to be revisited again in the not too distant future. We also have issues regarding resource allocation and any financial considerations whereby there is not an existing approved budget. Those types of issues would normally be referred to council or the policy committees, and clearly in the absence of that decision-making structure, we need a basis upon which we can make those decisions quickly again. In addition to those general areas, there are a number of service-related matters, principally around council tax and business rates and the impacts of that and how the council would respond to any future challenges which may arise in those particular areas. And then we have service-related matters around licensing and fees and such forth as we respond to the requirements of government in terms of getting business back to normal and supporting the local economy. So in terms of an urgent decision, I think it perhaps falls into three key areas. The first one is where we would need to respond to an urgent deadline. The second one would be recognising the needs of others in making that decision promptly and the impact that that could have on council business. And thirdly, protecting the interests of the council in any contractual matters, which was clearly the situation we faced in regard to freedom leisure. So that's just a flavour, Chair, of the types of issues that we've had to deal with so far, none of which could have been anticipated and really justifies the basis upon the report that's presented to you this evening.
Okay, thank you very much, Saundra and Paul. There are several hands up. I'm going to go to Councillor Purdy first, please.
Well, thank you, Chairman. Obviously, we've seen all the emails that have been trafficking this past few days, and I've been somewhat surprised by the tone of them, if I may say. And I think my best thrust is to try and help with some of the anxiety in those emails by assuring those members that there is no intention of this emergency committee to do anything underhand or untoward or even look at the Constitution. It's as Sandra and Paul has explained, it's the fact that we are in an emergency situation, and the most pragmatic and sensible way forward is for the setting up of an emergency committee. It was my suggestion that we arrive at the figure of 8 because I wanted fair and equitable share from each of the parties, and I thought that was also a sensible way forward. So I can only plead with those members that have had some anxiety to see, and hopefully they will vote with an open mind, notwithstanding their emails, that, as Sandra said, other authorities have taken this route, and clever with hindsight, perhaps that should have been done on the 19th of March. But we're learning in this emergency situation, we're having to move very quickly, and we need the expedience of that emergency committee to make those decisions. It was an horrendous decision that fell on Paul's shoulder with freedom leisure. We had the scenario that we could have ended up with the whole of the leisure services back in this council, and we wouldn't have been able to afford to run them. So that would have been an awful dilemma. And I hope that the leaders of all the parties and those that are going to make up this committee agree with me that we are going to be open and transparent. Members will get all the papers beforehand and see what is transparent and speak to the respective leaders, make comments, ask questions, and then that will give that committee the ability to make an informed decision. So I'm happy to move the recommendations, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hobson.
Chair, I'm happy to second this motion. We're in a time of emergency, and this committee is a way for the democratic role of this council to continue. As Councillor Purdy said, and I'll reiterate what I totally agree with everything he said, all the business will be streamed live on our public YouTube channel, enabling open and transparent decision making. I think the point of formally reviewing these procedures by the full council on the 2nd of July is a vital part, I believe, of this council accepting these recommendations. Thank you.
Councillor Flitter, please.
Hi.
You're on.
Yeah, I'm on. Yeah, like Councillor Purdy, Chair, I've seen many emails that have concerned me over the past few days, and I have tried to put some clarity on them myself. But we do still have some concerns, but I've tried to look at this logically and reasonably and not try to make political gain out of this, because we are in unusual times. We have to carry on business within the council. And this, to me, the Business Continuity and Emergency Committee, to me, is an extension of delegated powers, but it does include the members and the political groups. And I think that's where we have a handle on this. If we didn't have that, I wouldn't be so supportive. I also note that there are planning applications which will come to committee if they attract significant public objections, and that is also good. But a lot of people, I think, will be asking different questions on this, so I will be brief. But I just would like you to look at one thing, and that is that in para 6 on page 8, it does state in consultation, which can indicate a greater level of decision making, and that really should lead after consultation to avoid doubt. And I have brought this up in the past with Saundra over another situation, but I would at this particular time like to pay tribute to Saundra for the sound advice that she's given us over all these issues. I think that a lot of things have been said about the terms of reference, that they are a little vague. And I also agree with that, but I also see a danger in being too prescriptive. So therefore, tonight I am going to support this. I know that I will probably be out of tune with some of the opposition, but I will be supporting this, and I will propose that Councillor Cruz be a Lib Dem nomination for our seat. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm now going to go to Councillor Ratcliffe. Oh, where have you gone? Councillor Ratcliffe, I think we can hear you. Try.
Oh, sorry, Chair, you're inviting me in.
Yeah, yes, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have two questions to ask, and then I'd like to use my 2 minutes to make a statement for debate. But can I just say right at the outset that we seem to have slipped back into our old ways again of having the motion, or indeed the business before us, moved and seconded before the debate takes place again. I think there's a lot going to be said about this item, and I think it's up to all of us to listen to what that is, and then at the end give our firm a voting position. However, my two questions, first of all, can we have a firm undertaking that the two policy committees and planning will return back to some form of engagement with members again, just as soon as possible? I think that's paramount, that we can't leave them temporarily or indeed suspended for the long term. They must return back to some member engagement just as soon as possible. And my second question really is about what controls are present to prevent financial overspend by this committee. I'm pretty sure they're in place, but I'd just like them to be reiterated for the benefit of all of us. So 2 questions to begin with.
Would you take that, Councillor Fitzherbert?
Yes, please, Saundra,
Okay.
you're not on this screen.
So the first one, while suspending the policy committee and planning, the issue there is whilst we're dealing with an emergency, we need to concentrate on the priorities. But I hope that my additional recommendation, which is a commitment to review this and meet on the 2nd of July, will give that assurance that we need this time to bring those meetings back into place. And I'm hopeful that we will be able to include a positive recommendation at that meeting or explain why not. On the second point, the terms of reference in discharging matters from council are on the strict undertaking that money spent are within the existing budget. So we're giving powers of virement from one budget to the other, but it's not able to commit the council to any additional expenditure beyond which has already been budgeted. That belongs to the sole preserve of council, and that's the cyclical business that we do each year in setting our budget limits. So hopefully that will give you some reassurance there. But there may be the need for budget expenditure to pinch from Peter to pay for Paul during this emergency situation, if that helps.
Yes, thank you. That is reassuring. Right, my statement then, my budget debate contribution. I said before that Zoom video conferencing has its constraints, and I would suggest is more a vehicle for discussion really than debate. Its lack of physical interaction sets up a barrier against any real argument. However, we have this item before us that is demanding of us significant consideration. It can be argued that this undermines the democratic right of councillors to participate in the decision-making process. That is unnecessary given the established policy and planning committee format, and that little or no time would be saved in the practicality of establishing the meetings of this committee. It has been further suggested that summoning an extraordinary meeting of the full council will allow for greater participation with only a similar investment of time and resourcing. I would question those assumptions. There is an argument to be made that already many decisions, including financial expenditure, are delegated to officers, that the formation of policy and planning committees also give a form of delegation to our nominated committee members, albeit on political proportionality. This is not to say that members are excluded from those decisions. I am persuaded that the agenda and matters coming before the emergency committee will be available to all members in advance of the meeting. I am further assured that these items will be very clearly of an urgent nature. The fact that their subject may be in the domain of car parking or climate change should not preclude that the particular decision is not of an urgent nature. Members will be able to comment on these matters as they are able to at present with any policy or planning agenda, and refer their concerns to their representatives. There is a flexibility too, I am told.
Chair, is not this 3 minutes up?
Hold on, if you could just carry on, please, Mike.
Yeah, I shall be finishing very shortly.
Yes, please.
The principal constraint in my mind is that of the physical constraint, not being present in the council chamber, or in this case, the video conferencing room. Although I might argue that this Zoom format presents even less genuine discussion than I often witness in the town hall. Incidentally, curtailing our involvement to a 2-minute speech was a debate in its own right. Therefore, it is the question being asked is the democratic process really being subverted, or is it the intention here to provide a greater clarity and transparency, and indeed member inclusion, albeit it selective with participants? The terms of reference, constitutional procedures and safeguards, I feel are in place. If I felt for one moment that there was a political motive underlying these recommendations, I would be vehemently and adamantly opposed to this. However, these are extraordinary times requiring out of the ordinary responses, and we must be on our guard to prevent a weakening of democracy. That goes without saying, but I don't feel that these recommendations are such a threat.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go to Sue, Councillor Bull. Lower hand. Great, Sue.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, well, yes, we are in very difficult times, as it's all been stated. But knowing that I'm the chair of the Governance and Resources, the knowledge that we would try and get this emergency meeting group together feels better to me, because obviously giving delegated powers, as Paul said, to the officers is quite a big response. But obviously they have been talking to myself and obviously the other chair of C&E, and we're not being able to discuss this with our members and the members of the group and the actual committee. So again, I'm putting something forward and agreeing with, for something which really, yes, everybody should have a say in it. But as we've said, they're in difficult times, and I think coming under and having this emergency committee, it will give everybody in every party that's within the council the opportunity to speak and have their views, because the agenda will be put up and we know what we're talking about, and that can be betrayed through whoever's going to be the representative at the times at those meetings. So as far as I'm concerned, I think it should be a good idea, especially whilst we're in these times.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I would like to thank all the officers and staff of the District Council for keeping services going in this very difficult and dangerous time. So thank you to all the staff and officers. I realise that some members have concerns that democratic process could be undermined, and the proposal that the elected members for the new emergency committee would take democratic decisions away from the councillors. I do not see it this way. We still have the agenda sent to all councillors, and we will be able to put views to party members. And I know in my party, a democratic decision will be taken by all the councillors, so the leader can take that forward to the committee. We must realise that it is a very dangerous times in the UK. The UK is in deep trouble with the most deaths in Europe. So we need to be very, very on the ball and really try and get out of this. So if the Chief Executive and the officers recommend this as the best way forward for officers and the staff and the council to go along, I will go along with this. I've quite a difference. I think this is a very good idea, the Zoom, but we mustn't rush into getting back to council too quickly, because I think we've come out too quickly recently. But I would recommend that we use Zoom as much as we possibly can on planning, on resources committees, and I think we only can get better with it. So thank you, Chair, and I would like to say that I hope this will be only temporary, and by late this year or early next year, we'll be able to get back to having meetings in the town hall. So, right. Chair, I believe this very extraordinary times, and I would like to see this through. So I would support this recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Saundra, just to interrupt, really, Rob Archer had a bit of a problem with his computer, and he's been very honest and said he's missed 3 minutes of the questions as well, and he's asked me because he's in the waiting room, but he isn't. If you see what I mean?
Yes, I have responded to Councillor Archer.
And is he able to vote?
Yes, I think we're sufficiently going over ground, so you won't have missed any unique points at this stage.
Okay, lovely. Hopefully that's the clarification. Thank you for that. You'll see my head wandering all over the place, folks, but I'm trying to get to everyone. Councillor Pawley, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've got one question for Saundra, I think it is. But then I'd like to use my 2 minutes to give a little bit of an explanation rather than comment.
Okay.
The question is about extraordinary meetings of full council. Why can't we consider going along that rather more democratic route than having the emergency committee? I want to know what the reasoning is behind that. Is it a resources reason or what is it? That's my question. And then I'll come back once she's answered.
Saundra.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. I think from an officer perspective, this is one of resources, speed of decision making and being proportionate to the job in hand. Emergency decisions, I think, call for a select team in order to respond and be more flexible. Just in terms of the new meeting regulations, we can call meetings at any time. So there isn't such a thing as an extraordinary meeting in the old sense where it would have to be for a single item of business. But this is the officer's view of a proportionate response in all the circumstances, which are extremely dynamic.
Okay, that answers that. Thank you very much, Saundra. May I continue, Chair?
Yes, yes, please.
Right, I wanted to come back to Councillor Purdy's point about the number of emails that have been going around. I put my hand up and I think I started this, and I just want it came across as rather negative, but I do feel as a councillor I've got the right to ask questions, and we were asked to ask questions prior to the meeting. This all started because when I read the organisational update from the Chief Executive, there was one sentence in there which stood out, and it was the one about freedom leisure. And I wanted more detail, which I got, and was very kindly sent to me in great detail from Karen. And it explained exactly what we've got in the decision notice here. I asked for more detail. But what really worried me was that as a district councillor at home, this decision, not that the decision had been taken by the people concerned, but that all the other councillors who were sitting at home who weren't involved had no idea this was going on, and they wouldn't have known until this meeting this evening. So we weren't kept up to date. And I wondered whether this was going to happen with the emergency committees as well. This is obviously not going to happen. I hope that rather than just getting the agenda, we will get full details of what backs up the report rather than just the agenda itself. Because if we'd have just had that decision notice, we wouldn't have had, and I believe now there are councillors who won't have the full details of why that decision was taken. So that was the reason I started the whole range of emails. I spoke to various councillors to see what their opinions were, because I felt the democratic process wasn't being followed, and I feel that is something on the behalf of my residents I've got to stand up for. It's not a case of me being difficult, it's a case of me wanting due process explained to me. As I said in my emails, I will always listen to what everybody's got to say at one of these meetings. I will wait up as we go along. I don't go in deciding what I'm going to do right at the beginning. I make up my mind as we go along. So, having heard that we're going to have this 2nd July review, I will now vote for this recommendation. But I wanted to just explain, particularly to Councillor Purdy, but to all the other councillors as well, I'm not a difficult person. I just want clarity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We're going to go to Councillor Martin Burfoot now. Martin. You're on.
Yes, right, thank you. Yes, first of all, I'd like to echo Councillor Flitter's thanks to Sandra Lamb for the comprehensive way in which she's responded to councillors' questions. I do have concerns about some matters that are being voted for tonight in this item. Item 1, recommendation 1, okay. Recommendation 2, okay. Recommendation 3 on the emergency committee, which I think is acceptable in principle, but for urgent decisions only, not the more routine business of the 2 service committees. And I've heard obviously what Sandra has replied to Councillor Pawley just now and for her response, but I still cannot understand why we cannot refer all routine matters normally dealt with by the service committees to further remote or extraordinary meetings of the full council. Officer reports are required in any case, even for the so-called emergency committee. So what would be the difference, except that we as ward members would continue to have a say in matters affecting our towns, villages and local residents, as well as, of course, the environment and the services in those communities. So I do have concerns about that particular aspect. Recommendation 4, only genuinely urgent matters, which need some clear definition, and we've heard some of that tonight, should be referred to the proposed emergency committee. I believe the terms of reference for it are set out in Appendix 2 are rather broad and extensive, more so than I would have liked. I think they should be matters related to the COVID-19 crisis only. For instance, we've heard tonight from Paul about feed and leisure, for instance, and perhaps the garden waste service resumption, which are urgent matters that could be referred to that committee. Recommendation 6 on page 8, I think the proposed planning application procedure does, regrettably, I feel, effectively take all decisions out of the hands of elected councillors, since even in our 3-member wards, local representatives could well be permanently outvoted by the proposed system for determination. For instance, 3 senior officers plus the committee chair. I'm very unhappy about that, especially in view of some questionable decisions made in Matlock in recent years. And recommendation 7 on planning, particularly, what is exceptional business and significant planning applications, which attracts significant public opposition and where public participation is desirable. This is, I think, demeaning to local residents, because surely public participation in the determination of any planning application is not just desirable, but essential. So I'll listen to other members. I've not decided whether I'm going to support it or not tonight, but as I say, those 4 items, 4 recommendations, which I do have doubts about. Okay,
thank you very much. Councillor O'Brien, I've lost you.
I'm here.
Great, got it. Please.
Right, thank you, Chair. I've got a question and I'd like to make a point.
Of course.
My question relates to the information I think we received this evening that the councillors, the officers are going to prepare what they call a recovery plan. As far as I can see, there's nothing explicitly in the report we have before us which refers to something called a recovery plan. I'm pleased they're going to do that. My question is the emergency committee going to be the forum within which this recovery plan is put together? And can I assume that by its nature, the recovery plan is a matter which will be reserved for full council, and therefore the content of the plan will not be something which is agreed just by any emergency committee?
Who can answer that, Paul or Saundra?
Yeah, I will respond
Paul,
to
thank you.
I gave the example of a recovery plan because clearly, as we move forward in accordance with the government's announcement on Sunday, there is a move gradually to resume life and business as normal. But we're certainly not in a position to do that yet. And there's some pretty key decisions that as a council we will need to take before we get to that point. Now, there are an awful lot of services that we've suspended, particularly in the communities, which at some point we're going to need to pick up in accordance with the government guidance. Now, clearly, there are resourcing implications to do with the resumption of those services. There is the issue of what is the appropriate time to resume those services and actually how we go about doing that. So the corporate leadership team on the back of Sunday's announcement is over the coming weeks going to be working up what that recovery plan may look like. There may be resource implications, there may be other implications for the council. So I can't give you the detail at the moment because we haven't actually drafted the plan. But I did envisage that at some point the emergency committee may well, if constituted, have a role in that. But equally, the full council meeting on the 2nd of July could also have a role. It was just an example of something which we will need to do and need to do fairly swiftly in terms of business as normal.
Councillor O'Brien.
Okay, thank you for that answer. I mean, I'm put my hand up and say I'm one of those who has circulated emails, which is my want. I apologise if the tone of them can be construed as confrontational. It's not my intention. It's just perhaps my style of emailing. So I apologise for that. My issue with the recommendation is as much more as principle, I think, as practice. It is.
Sorry, sorry, Councillor O'Brien. We're just searching for Sue Bull. And I'd hate her to miss.
Councillor Burfoot, Sue Burfoot.
Oh,
Our
sorry.
camera's gone the other way round, I think. I'm not quite sure whether
right.
she's with us.
Yeah, Sue Burfoot. Sorry, if we could just.
Yeah, I think the camera's turned round the opposite way.
Right. Okay. I have seen
top
all your
left of the
hands.
screen.
Right. Oh, I see.
So the camera is just rotated.
Can we get Martin to go and knock on her door? Are you in the?
I can't get it back at all. The screen hasn't gone portrait, but it's just disappeared.
We don't want to lose you, Sue.
So if you can look at the top left-hand side of your screen, Councillor Burfoot.
Yeah.
There's a setting that changes from gallery view to speaker view. And just above that, you rotate the camera.
Oh.
There we go.
Super. Okay.
Thank you.
If you could just confirm you could hear all that was happening. That's excellent.
Yes, I could.
Very good. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
We'll go back to Councillor O'Brien.
Yes, sorry. I don't doubt the good intentions of the officers and members who are putting forward this proposal. I think my concern is the wording itself effectively delegates all decisions of the council to the emergency committee, and I echo Martin Burfoot's concerns that it doesn't restrict consideration and decisions to matters associated with the current crisis. It's open-ended and effectively sets the emergency committee up as a mini council. I therefore think the terms of reference are too loose in this respect. I'm not suggesting that it may be the intention of members of the emergency committee or of the officers to use it for anything other than emergency item, but the fact that any item at all, any decision at all can be taken by this committee, I think leads us to a risk of establishing an extremely undemocratic situation. And that's the reason that I found myself unable to support the proposal as it's currently put forward.
Okay, thank you very much for your contribution. We're now going to go to Councillor Chapman. I've lost him on my screen. David, right, there you go.
Thanks, Richard. I wondered what shows on the participants with the hands up, because the same four have been there all the time and mine was there at the start, but I don't know how it's supposed to work.
Sometimes they're taken down, but anyway, I'm trying to be as fair as possible. I've got you now.
Okay, right. Well, I've sort of been a little bit pacified by people's comments because, like Councillor Purdy, I was probably a little bit disappointed in the tone of them addressing our officers, because we've got very competent, very highly educated officers in this council, and I feel that maybe they were just being given probably a little bit too much criticism, not mild criticism, but they were, it was as I'd be demoralised by some of those emails if I was an officer at these councils, and I think councillors ought to really draw a breath when they do make those kind of comments, particularly at this time. I mean, we've got staff who are grossly overworked, and to give them that extra and to have, yeah, a slightly disappointing tone. I think really just think a bit next time, councillors. Okay. And in answer to you, Mike, with your concerns about Zoom, I think that we are going to have to accept this very soon as a way of life. I don't think we'll ever return fully to the way things were done before. And I think we have to get a handle on this. We have to get used to it, and we have to be proficient with it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've got Councillor Raw next. There we go.
Have you unmuted me? Thank you.
Yes, yes.
Right, just a couple of concerns that I wanted to put forward about this recommendation. One is about the makeup of the 8 councillors. I have a real concern that it could end up being very Matlock-centric or town-centric. Derbyshire Dales is a diverse geographic community, and I think, you know, different issues affect different areas of that community. So I would ask that any makeup of a committee, an emergency committee, considers not just the political representation of that group, but also the geographical representation of that group if this does get agreed.
Okay, thank you very much. And oh, sorry.
I'm concerned about what, excuse me, I'm finished. I haven't had 2 minutes.
Yeah, okay, carry on.
I just wanted to say that I'm concerned about what Paul Wilson was saying, because from what I'm hearing, decisions on when we will develop our recovery plan and what will be in the recovery plan and the timetable for that will be made by this emergency committee, and I'm not happy with that. I think that there's issues in terms of when we open our car parks, when we open our open spaces to the public. We are talking about life and death situations. I don't agree with what the government's done. I think we've come out of lockdown far too early. So I think there are some real serious decisions that can only be made by a full council. And I think that's why I will be voting against this motion.
Okay, thank you very much. Just to say, Councillor McDonald, can you hear us okay? We're a bit worried. Just put your hand. Great, okay, that's good. Councillor Gamble, you're next.
Oh, thank you. Really, I mean, Saundra knows I did give a list of extensive questions, which if people were annoyed at getting that, I wasn't the one who thought to send them round. It was asked if that my questions could be sent to members, which I think I am entitled to ask for clarification on things where if I get a report where there's things I don't understand and feel that I need more clarification as to why decisions to be made and who's going to make decisions, presumably I'm entitled to ask those questions, and that's why we were asked to submit questions beforehand, which I did, which was the request. After that, though, haven't had the replies. I must say, having had it said that we're going to review this in July, I feel a lot better about this now. I would feel even better if we had a commitment to say that members are going to be involved in this recovery plan. I think something that's been said that if we're going to take everybody with us and everybody's going to be happy with this, I think we do need members to actually be involved rather than it being a sort of top-down being imposed. I also had my initial reservations, again, the same as Councillor Purdy did, with the freedom leisure, that did give me some cause for concern as to how transparent, open and shared decisions would be by this committee. I also myself would feel a lot better about this if it was more than 8. The 8 does concern me slightly that it's such a small proportion of 39. I mean, I presume that as a democratic elected organisation, it was decided at some point that 39 elected members was what it took for us to function as a council. To reduce that to 8 does to me seem a little bit small. But again, if we can have a commitment to say that we will really push the process along to get to full Zoom meetings for our policy committees, for the planning committee, then I would feel a lot happier about that. And also, I'd like to reiterate that when some of the things that Councillor Chapman said, that I mean, I would like to get these meetings really onto Zoom. I know some members might feel very unhappy about Zoom. I would like this to continue. I would like this to be the start of, Derbyshire Dales really coming into the 21st century, and having members, eventually, if they want to contribute to meetings remotely. I think this is something we actually could embrace as a positive push for change to move to a new way of working.
Okay, thank you very much. I've got Councillor Morley next.
Thank you, Chair. It simply goes back to the point I was making earlier on. Have we moved from questions into debate? That's a question, because it's unclear. And if we have, it simply underlines the fact that there's a need for clarity of thinking and good time management on the part of all the councillors. And I will be supporting the motion because I believe we should put our trust and our faith in the leaders of the groups and our officers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Purdy, please. Great, you're on.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for letting me come back, and it's important to do so because there's some points need clarification. First of all, I'm not objecting to any member asking questions. Of course, I would not do that or even think about that. I think Councillor Chapman's taken the words out of my mouth with the tone of the emails, and so there's no reference to Councillor Pawley at all. So I'm a bit taken aback, Joyce, with your sort of pointed comments to me. It was no reference to you at all. I thank Councillor O'Brien for his apology. And I'll be honest with you, Peter, it was the tone. And it's a fact that we have a good council here and we have some very, very good officers. And it seems to us that we're in this small frame at looking at this issue, that there was a lack of trust with what was being said and put forward. And Councillor Ratcliffe, there is actually no intention at all to take away democracy. That is farthest from our mind and not even in our thinking. What is the most uppermost in our mind is the safety of everyone. I refer back to my leader's announcement. We've got to look after the safety of our members, our public, and I agree with Councillor Slack, and I agree with others that have said we've come out too early. I personally think we have as well. So there is a great concern for safety. We need to keep our powder dry for the moment. We need to look at a sensible way forward. And the sensible way forward at the moment is to go slowly, step by step, incremental, look at what we need to do from the government advice, have our own decisions within our committees, take reference from all of our members. We're a democratic council, so there's no hint at all of anybody being cut out of this. Please be assured on that. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Sue Burford. Hopefully I've unmuted you. No, I haven't. Great.
Can you hear me?
Sue, yeah.
Yeah. First of all, could I just say that I'm pleased that we're going to have a meeting on July the 2nd. That gives me some confidence. I'm also pleased that virtual planning meetings are going to be convened as and when we get very controversial and significant planning applications. I notice in the report, and I'll just go along with what the other Councillor Burfoot said, which was that public participation in planning decisions at committee is desirable. It's absolutely crucial. It's vital that we hear from the public. The planning applications affect local people and they need to be able to have their say, and we've got to find a way for them to do that, given that we might be in this position for some time. Otherwise, where's the democracy in planning? It's got to be seen. As regards the numbers in this emergency committee, I too are concerned that 8 out of 39 is not a big number. It means that 31 of us are not really going to have an awful lot of say in what's decided. And I just wonder why we couldn't double it up to 16. The proportions would still be the same. And if we're going to have these virtual meetings, the agenda's still got to be sent out. The staff have still got to set up a meeting. So why not with more than 8? Why does it have to be 8? Could we not double it up?
Would you like Saundra to answer that one?
Yes, please.
Thank you, Chair. As I said before, the number of councillors on the committee isn't a magic number. It's 8 to involve all political groups. I think the bigger it becomes, the more cumbersome it becomes. It's seen as officers to be an optimum number, but the makeup is entirely yours, as long as it's politically proportionate.
Okay, thank you very much. I've got Councillor Hughes now.
Thank you, Chair. I read these notes while I was ill, so I apologise if I make any strange comments.
Firstly, are you better now?
I am pretty well better now.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Okay, so having listened to the debate and one thing I have appreciated is seeing the questions before the meeting. I feel that this would be excellent practice in normal council meetings, and a lot of minor points could be forestalled by having those points made by email previously. Then moving on, I believe this meeting has gone extremely well, and I think the experience of this meeting would give me full confidence in suggesting that full council meetings could be used to make the decisions on these important points, and also that the policy and other committees could be run on Zoom as well, and could be held very effectively. So I would prefer, rather than have this emergency committee, to continue with meetings online, and that would, I think we would be able to do that and do that very effectively. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've got Councillor Flitter, please.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to come back because I didn't get an answer to my question on para 6 on page 8 about the change of the word from in to after, for clarity, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, Councillor Flitter and I have had this discussion outside of the meeting room, and I think it would be a sensible thing to do. I think there is an implication or a misunderstanding of true delegation to officers, which some new members may not be aware of. It's certainly not a ballot, and there may be different views on how an officer reaches that decision. So I think after would be a clarification, which I'm quite happy to accept.
Okay, does that meet with approval from the proposer and seconder? So that's Gary and Sue. You're not on this screen. Gary? It's a thumbs up from Gary. Is that a thumbs up from Sue?
Yes, Chair.
Yeah. Okay, and from Sue? Yeah. Okay, good. I've got one.
Yeah.
Lovely thing. I've got one final speaker, Councillor Bright, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to really reiterate where we've come from. We're in a changing dynamic situation, and we must be able to respond and make decisions in a timely manner. This is so very important at the moment. As I understand it, all members will still have the ability to relay their thoughts and opinions to their representatives on the emergency committee, which makes complete sense, and in my eyes is as democratic as we can hope to be at this current time. I also feel that getting 8 members together would be more easily done than getting 39. People will have commitments that they have. People who are currently working or working in key areas will be asked to work at short periods of time. So I think this is great. I also am very, very pleased to hear that the recovery plan is something that we're looking at the moment, because it is vitally important that we get the economy back up and running. Without a good, healthy economy, we have no means to pay for all these excellent public services who are doing their amazing job at the moment. With regards to planning, I would just encourage all councillors to continue speaking to the planning officers. They are there, they're available, and they are still very happy to speak to everybody with regards to any planning matters. And finally, I agree that Zoom or other platforms are the way forward, as it will involve less travel and less movement of people up and down the county, as in all the councillors, all the members of staff. And I see this as a positive way forward. So I'm going to support this motion in full.
Thank you. Well, finally, Councillor Purdy has just indicated something. Councillor Purdy.
Sorry. Yes, hi. I'm just coming back about the 2nd of July review. Does that mean that we could look at the numbers again on the committee if we decided that that wasn't working satisfactory at that point?
Okay, thank you very much. We'll get an answer on that.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, jolly good. Okay, so it's been moved and set. Oh, Councillor Gamble, have you got something extra? Because I was trying to finish this one. I only just saw you.
Sorry, it's just the point about if our members going to be involved in this recovery plan. I did raise the idea that if members were involved in the way forward on top of things, it would be very reassuring. I just wanted to get a verbal commitment to that.
Saundra.
I think the recovery plan, which Paul might want to bring to the early stages of the emergency committee, will be an overview format, which will set the direction of travel, which will need widespread involvement by members. And may stand to be contradicted, but I'm sure that was our original intention. If Paul would just clarify that that is our intention.
Yes, Chair, that is very much the intention. As I say, CLT has only just literally today started the discussions on that. There is an awful lot of discussion and work taking place across Derbyshire through the local resilience forum, which we will tap into, but we will clearly also bring our own proposals forward in due course.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for a very thorough debate.
Thank you for that.
Great. Okay, very thorough debate. Thank you very much. I'm going to hand over to Jackie now for the vote.
Right. Councillor Allison.
Abstain.
Archer.
For.
Atkin.
For.
Bright.
For.
Buckler.
Abstain.
Bull.
For.
Martin Burfoot.
Martin, are you there? Where is he? Martin?
Against.
Sue Burfoot.
Sorry, Sue, we didn't hear that.
Against because of the numbers.
Battle. Councillor Battle.
You unmute yourself. Where are you?
Yeah, sorry, I was clicking the wrong button. Yeah, I'm for this. Thank you.
Chapman.
For.
Cruz.
For.
Donnelly.
For.
Elliott.
For.
Fitzherbert.
For.
Flitter.
For.
Froggatt.
For.
Finesse.
For.
Gamble.
Abstain.
Hobson.
For.
Hughes.
Abstain.
Please.
For.
Donna.
For.
Tony Morley.
Tony Morley, did we hear that? Gosh, what's going off? Tony Morley? Where are you?
Four, he said.
Okay.
Michelle Morley. 4. O'Brien.
Against.
Hawley.
What did he say?
4. Purdy.
4.
Ratcliffe.
Mike
Councillor
Ratcliffe.
Ratcliffe.
Where's he gone?
Councillor Ratcliffe.
Councillor Ratcliffe. Oh, he's there. Mike, your vote.
4.
Raw. Councillor Raw.
It's all going to bits.
Councillor Raw.
4.
Councillor Raw.
I think she's mouthing against. Is that against?
4.
So we've done. So we've done Mike. We've done Mike. We're on to Councillor Raw, and I think she's against. Is that right? Just looking at it. We need to hear you, please. There's a bit of a connection problem.
Councillor Raw has emailed me privately to say against.
Fine, thank you. That's against.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Rose.
Where's he gone? Councillor Rose.
4.
Right.
Oh. Councillor Salt.
4.
Councillor Shirley. I didn't hear.
Hold on. Where is he?
Councillor Roseback.
Yeah.
I'm against.
Councillor Shirley said 4.
Thank you.
Slack.
4.
Statham.
4.
Sutton.
4.
Swindle.
4.
Wayne.
4.
Thank you.
So what's the vote, please? What are the numbers?
9-4.
Yeah.
4
Yeah.
against.
Yeah.
4 abstentions.
Okay.
Yeah,
Can I suggest we all take a comfort break now? Thank you very much, everyone. Amendments to rules of procedure, substitutes and duration of meetings. Saundra.
Okay, thank you. So this is an item that we debated at the last ordinary meeting of council, and it follows a discussion at the Leaders Advisory Group. What this change in the rule of procedure aims to do, and I think it was a valid prompt raised by one of our members, that when you serve on the planning committee, you should be allowed adequate time to read the papers, prepare yourself before you go. And if you're a substitute called at the last minute, you may not have that opportunity. That's high risk for this council if anyone enters that chamber without having time to be fully prepared. So we agreed at the Leaders Advisory Group, and it was proposed and seconded at the last council meeting that this should move forward for discussion, that we should change the substitute scheme to allow a longer period for notification, and also to reduce the numbers proportionate to the members on the committee to mitigate the risk to the council from anyone not being prepared in their role. I have to say thank you for the questions, because I think it does allow the person who's presenting the report to home in on some of the issues that are relevant. And thank you for Councillor Martin Burfoot for raising the issue of how we treat odd numbered membership of committees. And I think it does raise a valid point. So I would like to add in the preamble that for the avoidance of doubt, where there is an odd number, we will always round up in terms of calculating the number of substitutes allowed.
Right, thank you very much. Councillor Finesse.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Yes, I would like to move these recommendations. The world has changed dramatically since they were first recommended at the January meeting, but I'm quite sure the need for the changes hasn't changed. So I'm happy to move them again.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Hobson.
Chair, I'm happy to second this motion. As Sandra's already said, we have discussed this at full council with all members and also at the Leaders Advisory Group. It seems sensible to go through all these recommendations. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Pawley, I'll just unmute you. I know you better do it.
Yeah, I just wanted to come to 3.3 about substitution. I'm a bit concerned about this for the policy meetings and council meetings. I can understand why we would want to do that for planning meetings where they might not get the chance to go on the site visits or have some of the updates that officers might give during the period in between the finish of the site visit and the start of the meeting. So I wondered why we were applying that to all meetings now. That's my question.
Saundra.
I think we need a substitute scheme and rules of procedure that apply to all committees. That's how the Constitution is currently written. But I think the principle still stands. If you're on a policy committee, you are making really important decisions, and that notification period in order for you to be prepared is key. And I think the reduction in substitutes to be proportionate to group strength won't disadvantage any group, but it will enable a sense of specialism to develop if you know you're one of a limited number in a pool on a particular subject matter.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Flitter.
I couldn't possibly come back.
Oh, of course, yes, sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, I wonder what will happen if you fall ill on the morning. Is that something that's not going to be allowed for then? If you've no real reason why you can plan in advance, how do you deal with that one?
If you accept the proposals, there won't be any provisions for you to substitute. I think the same would fall true if you were to fall ill thinking that you were going to attend a meeting and you hadn't got time to arrange a substitute provision. There is that risk that someone will be disadvantaged in those circumstances.
Okay. Councillor Flitter, please.
Thank you, Chair. No real concerns on this, but Martin put the question to Saundra about the number of rounding up, which is very much welcome. But in my opinion, it's got to be political balance has got to be retained, and also fairness. And I'm just wondering, for those who only have one member on a committee, are they still going to get one substitute? Will it affect them? Will it affect the groups with higher numbers more than the ones that don't? So I want a fairness across the board. And the other point that I was just thinking to myself, Zoom meetings, 2.5 hours long plus an extra half hour, is that too much? But tonight, we've already experienced that nearly, so I'm quite at ease with that. But I just do want political balance to be retained and fairness as a whole.
Just on that point, Councillor, the seats on committees are based on political proportionality. So if you're allowed 2 members, you will get 1 substitute. If you've got 3 members, obviously we'll be rounding up, but the minimum is 1. So any group with 1 member will be entitled to 1 substitute. So everyone is affected proportionately.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gamble.
Just on that, sorry, just to confirm. So if there's 3 members on a committee, are you saying that those 3 would only get 1 substitute?
Now, this is the clarification that Councillor Martin Burfoot raised. If we apply the 50% up to 2.
Oh, right. Okay, that sounds good. Thank you.
And Councillor O'Brien, please.
Thank you, Chair. I support the recommendations, but I have a query over the impact of recommendation 3, and that's over the time limitation on business. But while I support that, it often has seemed to me over the years that the order on which items appear on agendas is quite important, and it does seem to happen relatively often that important items appear towards the end of the agenda, and this has the effect of making it difficult to have meaningful discussions on what are important items. So what I'd like a reassurance is that the order of an agenda, the order on which items are presented on an agenda, is discussed and agreed with the group leaders before the agenda is published, to ensure that adequate time is given to what consensus is reached on are the most important items.
Okay, so the current procedure, Councillor O'Brien, is that we have pre-agenda meetings with the committee chair, where officers will bring forward their draft reports, we'll go through them, and we'll try to come up with a running order that first of all addresses the needs of the public in anticipation of any public that may be coming along to a meeting, so that their item is first. It also follows that any exempt business is always last, so that we're not going in and out of public session. So consideration is given to the order of business. And I think, unfortunately, some agendas have items of equal weight, where it's unavoidable that if we do have to implement the guillotine as proposed, those matters will be postponed. But we do go through that process already, but it doesn't involve all group leaders. It's currently with the committee chair.
And it should also be said that, of course, you set the agenda 10 days prior to the meeting, and there could be questions or other procedural things that come into the bag that have to be taken first on the agenda as well. So it's not always the best laid plans, let's put it like that. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. We now, I don't think I've got anybody else speaking. Can't see it from my screen. I will put it to the vote. Jackie, please.
Right, Councillor Allison.
4.
Archer.
4.
Atkin.
4.
Bright.
4.
Buckler.
4.
Bull.
4.
Martin Burfoot. Martin Burfoot.
That's there.
Where is he?
And again, Martin.
4.
Thank you.
Sue Burfoot.
4.
Councillor Buttle.
4.
Chapman.
4.
Cruz.
4.
Donnelly. Councillor Donnelly.
4.
Elliott.
4.
Fitzherbert.
4.
Flitter.
4.
Roggett.
4.
Finesse.
4.
Gamble.
4.
Hobson.
4.
Hughes.
4.
Lees.
4.
Donna.
4.
And Tony Morley. Tony Morley.
Shalom, 4. Yes, please. 4.
Michelle Morley.
4.
O'Brien.
4.
Hawley.
4.
Purdy.
4.
Ratcliffe.
4.
Raw.
4.
Rose. Councillor Rose.
4.
Okay. Councillor Salt.
4.
Salt. 4. Shirley.
4.
Black.
Peter, are you there?
Councillor Slack.
4.
Statham.
4.
Sutton.
4.
Brindle.
4.
Wayne.
4.
That's unanimous.
Thank you very much. Moving on then to item 8A, appointment of monitoring officer. Paul, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. It is a legislative requirement that the council does have one of its officers designated as the monitoring officer. However, that officer cannot be the chief financial officer. It cannot be the chief executive. This role is currently held by Saundra Lamb in her capacity as Director of Corporate Services, and following the appointment of James McLaughlin as the Council's new Director of Corporate and Customer Services following Saundra Lamb's retirement, it is requested that Council approve James McLaughlin as being the new monitoring officer from the 10th of August. In doing so, I hope members would join with me in thanking Saundra for delaying her retirement slightly in order to help the District Council through the current COVID-19 situation. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Atkin, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I would like to remove the recommendation as set out in the report. And also I'd like to thank Saundra for the time she's put into our authority over the numerous 40-odd years she's done in, whether it was West Derbyshire or whatever role when it was the Urban District Council. So I'm very happy to move the recommendation and thank Saundra for all the work she's done previously. Thank you, Chair.
And Councillor Flitter.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd like to thank Paul and Saundra and the team for inviting the leaders to be present at the presentation that the 3 candidates gave. And I did send a message to Paul that this was the only candidate that recognised that a large proportion of Derbyshire Dales residents are still not within the virtual world and who are not searching for information about this council. And I shall be very interested to see and hear what views he has on tackling that situation, because on this occasion where COVID has been very much in the forefront, people still ring and asking questions which the answers are on the website, but they do not go on it. And I'd be very, very interested to see how this is going to work. But and aside for that, I also want to give my congratulations, and I'm in awe of the work that Saundra has done for this council. I would have hoped I would have found something to say I may do at another particular time, but all I can do in remembering Saundra is looking at a Facebook page, and I hope that she's going to have as much fun off screen as she is on. Thank you.
And Councillor Flitter. Sorry, Councillor Purdy, I beg your pardon. Just had Steve.
Thank you, Chair. It's another stepping stone down towards Saundra's retirement. It's an historic moment. It's not time to say goodbye yet to Saundra, and we are really, really grateful for her staying on. Saundra's given unbelievable and hard work support to this authority. We four leaders, as Councillor Purdy said, are grateful for being involved with that interview process. It's interesting to see that we didn't pick the final candidate, but as I said to Paul, obviously we look forward to working with James, and I'm sure he'll work well. I can't see him really fitting into the shoes of Saundra though, or having the same hairstyle. But there we go.
Okay, Councillor Raw, please.
Yes, I just wanted to add my thanks to Saundra as parliamentary candidate and the way she ran the election campaign and how supportive and helpful she was in providing information on process. And you know, I don't think I could have done it without her, and I think she's a real credit to Derbyshire, and she'll be missed, I'm sure, across all the political groups. But a special thank you to me for all the support she gave during the parliamentary election. Thank you, Sandra.
Okay, thank you for that. We've been moved and seconded. I'll now go to Jackie for the vote.
Councillor Allison.
4.
Archer.
4.
Atkin.
4.
Bright.
4.
Buckler.
4.
Bull.
4.
Martin Burfoot. 4. 4. Sue Burfoot. 4. Buttle.
4.
Chapman.
He may have left. He advised me he had to leave at 8. Is he still? No, I think he's left the meeting, I'm afraid.
Cruz.
4.
Donnelly.
4.
Elliott.
4.
Fitzherbert.
4.
Litter.
4.
Froggatt.
4.
Finesse.
4.
Gamble.
4.
Hobson.
4.
Hughes.
4.
Lees.
4.
Donna.
4.
Tony Morley.
4.
Michelle Morley.
Michelle? Michelle?
4. O'Brien.
Oh.
Paulie.
4.
Purdy.
4.
Ratcliffe.
4.
Raw.
4.
Rose.
4.
Salt.
4.
Shirley.
4.
Slack.
Peter?
Councillor Slack.
4.
Statham.
Andrew? Where's he gone? Andrew?
Councillor Statham.
4.
Sutton.
4.
Brindle.
4.
And Wayne.
4.
Unanimous.
Thank you very much. That's good. So that's passed. We'll now go to CDM documents, which you'll believe to hear that we do not require a vote as such, but it's your general consensus of head nodding and thumbs up. And I'd like to ask Councillor Buttle to propose the motion of CDM documents. Councillor Buttle?
Proposed.
Very good. And Councillor Gamble?
The motion.
Thank you. And Councillor Gamble to second.
I'll second.
All those in favour, please show your hands or wave.
Yeah.
Lovely. That's great. I think that's unanimous. Thank you very much. And I'd just like to say, all of you stay safe, stay well, and let's hopefully see you all in the ether on this forum in July. Okay, stay safe. Thank you very much. Good night.
Chairman Richard, well done. Well done, Richard.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Richard. Thanks, Sandra.
Good night, all.
Bye.
Thank you.
Well
Good
done,
night.
everybody. Bye. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.